Okay, so welcome all. So today in this session, we will talk about some broadcast receivers and broadcast senders. So broadcast receivers are basically the Android. It's an Android component which allows to receive or send the Android system messages or the application messages. So it is just a kind of a broadcast signal to all the components which are there inside the Android system only. So let us take an example that how the broadcast receiver or broadcast sender works. Suppose if your smartphone is capable of having an internet connection, and internet connection is like it is actually usable by all the applications which is installed inside your Android devices. So suppose if your smartphone has a you just basically disabled your Wi-Fi or any other network connectivity. So your smartphone is not capable of having the internet connections, right? So what happens that no application will able to access the internet because you just disabled the radio services. So what happens when you actually enable the services accidentally? So suppose if after a very long time you just enable the Wi-Fi services or a network services, so what happens that it just opens up and it just broadcasts itself to the Android system in such a way that it will enable or it will send the information to all the applications installed inside the Android in such a way that I am up and the applications you want to access the internet, they can. So the moment you on your Wi-Fi or any other adapter or any other radio services, so applications like WhatsApp or Facebook, that will be able to access the internet and your notifications popped up, right? So how the application knows that internet is now enabled or not? So it's just you can say a overhead for a application such that it should not be able to ping the Android system that whether the Wi-Fi or any other radio is enabled or not. So it's just a sole responsibility for the Android system only. So it should broadcast itself in such a way that it should send all the information, or you can say it should just send a broadcast signal to all the application that I am up and whoso want the internet connection, they can use the internet. So let's take an example of same the thing as in the Android coding. So now here you can see that we have a Android application which is having a broadcast thing. So in the broadcast manner, what I did here is that to check whether what is the status of Wi-Fi or any other radio activity, radio any signal is there or not. So radio signals are just like any Wi-Fi or any other telephony messenger, or you can say any other Bluetooth devices are there. So if any one of them is enabled and that device is capable of having an internet connection, so it should broadcast itself. So this application actually checks whether any Wi-Fi or any other you can say the radio signal is enabled or not. So in this view, you can see that we have a class named as broadcast, and broadcast is a activity, right? So it's not a service or it's not you can say any other thing. So it's just an activity. So broadcast is a class which is having a onCreate function in itself. So in itself, it's just having a layout name as activity broadcast. So let's take a look inside the activity broadcast. So there is a shortcut for having this activity name and going inside the coding, or you can say just opening the thing regarding the XML or Java. So you can just hover it, any of the thing you want go into a detail, and by pressing the control key, you will see there is a reference to that. So if you click on this, so it will open that particular file, right? So in this particular file, so activity underscore broadcast.xml is opened. So inside I have just written a text view that is a simple widget, which is having a ID name as internet status and setting some width and height and centering and text size and bolding. So it's just minor settings, right? So what we do is we will just print the status whether the device is connected over the internet or not using any of the devices, or you can say any of the radio services. So now let us take an example that this ID, that is intent underscore status, is a ID which is given to this text view, and we want to bind this intent underscore status to the Java object. So what we do is that we're going back to our broadcast file. So first of all, we have to create a text view. So this text view is actually binded with the internet status with this statement. So I will give you what is the meaning of a static and what is the meaning of a private. I will give you a glimpse. So I think a private and the public things are actually okay with you, because these are actually the class identifiers, whether you want to access this particular instance globally, publicly or privately. So what we do is that in the onCreate function, so inside the onCreate function, we will first start up the internet status. So for checking the internet status, we first find the connectivity manager. So we have initiated the activity manager by calling it services. So connectivity manager as a get system services. So system services as connectivity underscore service. So this is a service regarding the connectivity, whether it is connected over the internet or not. So after that, we will call the network info. So network info, it will call network info, which is actually a you can say a function inside the connectivity manager. So it's a method. You have just called the method inside the connectivity manager, and after that, it will give you a status whether it is connected or not. So it will check whether this network info, the return of this network info, is actually null or it is connected or not, right? So this network underscore info, if it is not null, means it is having something inside this network info, and network info is connected. So is connected, it will give you a true or false statement. The return type of this is a boolean. So if it is connected and it is contain not null, so it means this statement is true. So if it is statement is true, then we will call a function as change text status as true. Otherwise, if any one of them is false, that means the if statement is creating a false statement. So we will switch to the else statement, where the change text status to be false. So what we do is that we will go into this function, that how this function works. So you can just go with the similar thing, that you can just highlight this one and go with this definition, or simply you can press control and click on this. You will get to the you can say a definition for that function. So inside the change text status, you can find that it is having only one argument, or only one parameter, which is actually a Boolean type, because here we are also passing a Boolean value as a true or a false statement. So if the network info is not null and network info is connected, is returning a true statement. So it means if statement will be able to run. So if statement, it means it will run this function by passing a parameter as true. So if the parameter passed as a true, so what it means is, is connected will have a value as true. So if is connected, so it means it is true. So if statement will be run. So if statement, inside the if statement, there are two statements. So internet status dot set text as internet connected. So it will update the text of the text view with the new, you can say a string with the internet connected, and the internet status, that's the same text view. We just set the color with this. So coloring, so it is in the hexadecimal format. So first two values, that is 00, is corresponding to R. So and this sorry, and this next two values are corresponding to G, that is green, and these two values are corresponding to B, that is blue. So RGB, the combination of two, and in front of that you just put a pound sign. So this represents a hexadecimal number with the values as RGB. So 00 means low value and FF means the high value. So here is the FF value. It means it will enable the green color. So if the Boolean value, that is the is connected, is producing a false statement, it means if it is not connected. So this else statement will be able to run. And so inside the else statement, we have again the text view with the updated text as internet disconnected, and internet status to a set color to be the this color. So this color is the R field, that is the red color is enabled as high, and green and blue are set as low. So here you can see that the color according to the internet disconnected is kind of a red. And after that, there are two functions. You can say functions which are there for each activity. One is called on pause, on resume. So inside the on pause, so we are just updating the value, whether just you can say updated the global boolean value by calling a function. So this is a my function dot activity paused. So this my function is actually a class which is there inside the, you can say, Java manifest. So inside the Java manifest, we have a class name as my application. Inside there is a method name as activity paused. So inside the activity paused, if you want to take a look what is inside the activity paused, so similar way you can just press the control key and click on it. So here is the my application.java file. So inside the my application.java file, we have simply a application which is extending an application only. So this application is not activity. So it is just extending the application. So the broadcast.java has an extension to the my application. So here we are having you can say a static boolean activity visible. So this is actually a variable which is actually having a type of boolean which is can be accessed inside the broadcast.java file also. So here we can see that we have three functions or three methods inside the class file. One is called is activity visible. So this is just is activity visible is a method inside the my application class which has a return type of a boolean, and it will return the value for the activity visible. So this activity visible will return value whether the value has a false statement or a true statement. So inside the same my application class, there is another method named as activity resumed. So this is our own method. So this is not an inbuilt method for a my application or application. So this is a method which is there, which is we called as a activity resume. So we just updating the activity visible is equal to true. So activity visible is equal to true suggests that we are just updating the activity visible to be true, and with the activity paused, so the reverse of the activity visible, that is false. So if the activity is paused, then we will go for a we will update the activity visible to be false. If it is resumed back, so we just update the activity visible to be true. So now let's take a look at the broadcast Java. So we are just calling the activity paused function inside the on pause, and on the resume we are just calling the activity resume. So we are just updating the you can say a variable which is of a boolean type to be a true or a false, right? So let's take a look how this application looks like. So this is my smartphone, and now it is actually having a 4G connection connected right now, right? So if it is connected, then it should say that the internet is connected. So it will take another 10 to 15 seconds to build up. Yeah. So here services and broadcast button. So it will activate my second activity, services and broadcast. So if I am able to click on this, so it is saying that internet is connected. So how it is saying that internet is connected? Because my 4G connection is connected. So see what happens when I disconnect my 4G. So my Wi-Fi is disabled, my 4G connection is disabled, and nothing else is enabled, right? Except the location. So nothing is enabled. So by going back and opening the same activity, so it is saying that internet is disconnected. So it means the broadcast receiver is actually working well, because it is actually showing that whether your device is connected over the internet or not, right? So here you can actually check the status whether your device is connected or not. So if your device is connected, you can just simply change these lines to your application oriented you can say coding in such a way that you can code itself in such a way that you can make your own changes as a way. So if the device is connected over the internet, you can make your own application, because this is just an example to validate whether your device is connected over the internet or not. You can do anything regarding this thing, whether you can check whether your system is up or not. If the system boots up, then what are the application you want to run at the boot up? Just like um, um, if the system or if the application wants that to be run at the boot up, so you can simply call that application on a boot up. If the boot is complete, then that application should run up. So just like the same thing that we call it in Windows, that in the startup applications. So whenever the system boots up, so it will call all the application which are as a shortcut, which are there in the startup folder. So it's act as a same. So for that you have to call that application on a boot up. So whenever the system boots up, it will boot itself, right? So this is the main thing. So one more thing I want to add here. I think you may get a knowledge about manifests. So the thing there in the manifest. So at the very first you can say session, I just discussed about that the manifest is kind of a heart to the Android system. So the main question arises that if you upload or if you send this file, that is compiled file, the compiled file is actually in a .apk extension. So if you upload this file or if you send this file to any other user, so how that particular smartphone knows that how many intents or how many activities or what kind of services are there, because all of the things are done in a Java format, or you can say Java extension. And Java runs virtually in your device, because Java, that particular kind of a code will not be compiled again. So only compiled files are sent over the Android devices. So Android devices, how the Android device knows that how many classes or how many files are there inside the single, you can say, single application. So for that, this Android manifest.xml is kind of a heart of that APK file. So here you can see that this is kind of a manifest. So inside a manifest, we have a package name. So this is a package name, and it uses a permission as a Android permission access the Wi-Fi state. So this is actually regarding the broadcast thing. So whenever you want to check whether the system is connected over the Wi-Fi or not, so we have to use a permission to access the Wi-Fi state, whether it is enabled or not. Second permission is accessing the that 4G or radio services or not. So access the network state. So access the Wi-Fi state and access the network state. So these are the two, you can say, permission that have been added inside the broadcast.java file. So inside this, we have applications. So application tag. So inside the application tag, we have different activities. So first activity should be kind of a main activity. So here you can see the first activity, which has a name as .main activity. So .main. So I just in the first session I just discussed that what is the meaning of a dot. Dot means is just an extension to the package. So this is a package name. So after that there is a dot and there is a main activity. So there is no need to put all the package name and after that calling the activity. So simply you can declare the package as a global thing, and after that you can call by its Java file name. So that's a main activity. So that main activity is kind of a main intent which is acting as a launcher. So this means that whenever your application runs, so this main activity will be launched. So if you want that, if you have 3 or 4 activities, just like this one here, you can see. So activity name as broadcast, right? So activity name as broadcast, activity name as a timer activity, and activity name as share pref. So these are 3 kind of activities. So it means that on the main activity, I have just write a code regarding just like this one. So I have declared different buttons. So on a different buttons, I have declared different you can say click events. So what kind of event to be taken when this button is clicked or whenever this button is clicked. So inside this thing, so first of all, whenever the application is launched, this main activity will be launched. After that, you have to click this button to perform, or you can just open the these activities, right? So service broadcast activity or a timer service activity. So you can do that also, but there is a shortcut also. So that shortcut means, so you can whether change that name, this if you want, suppose if you want to launch this timer activity to be your first activity, that is your main activity, just simply this main activity with the timer activity. So what it means that, so whenever your application runs, it will launch by default timer activity as your first activity, right? So here you can see that we have activity name as broadcast, and the broadcast has some kind of a receiver in it. So inside the receiver, we name as a dot internet connection underscore receiver. So internet underscore connection receiver is kind of a receiver. So we have declared that also here. You can see I have highlighted it. So we will go inside this, what kind of a receiver and what kind of a coding inside there. So here we are saying that it is unable to be true, and it is actually calling the any connectivity change, Wi-Fi state, or a state change, right? So these are the three kind of connectivity status or a kind of a action that has to be called whenever this receiver is receiving anything. So let's take a look inside the internet connection dot underscore receiver. So it is just same as by controlling by clicking the control button and click on it. So you will be redirected to internet connection underscore receiver, which is extending a broadcast receiver. So same thing. So it is not a activity. So it's just a broadcast receiver. So it should not have any front end to this because it is not an activity. So this, after extending this, so there are functions like on receive. So this is a, you can say, a interface for on receive function, which is having two arguments. One is called context and one is called intent. So context and intent are the two, you can say, parameters which are there for the on receive. So here you can see that Boolean is visible, my application is activity visible. So this is again the, you can say, a variable which is being called inside the my application. Here you can see activity visible, and this is a function, or you can say a method, which is being declared inside the my application class. So here we can call this function using this class name. So how we can call it? So simply call the class name dot the method. By default, you will not be able to access the methods inside the class because of the private in nature, and by default the classes are private. So that is why we are just putting a public static in front of that any activity or any, you can say, variable. So here we are seeing that this is a method which is inside the my application class, and we are putting a public static to be accessed outside this Java class, right? So inside the internet connection underscore receiver, we are having a my application is activity visible. So this is a thing which is been called from my application, and after that log.i as the information, it has been given output as a information that this is a tag name and this is the message we want to see, that whether it is visible or not. So it will get the value from this function and store in this, because this function has a return type of a Boolean. So that is stored inside this variable, and we are just simply printing that variable, that is activity enabled as a string, plus concatenating with the variable value. So after that, we are taking a preventive measures such that if it is visible, it is true. So if the value of that particular variable is returning a true statement, then we are just initiating the connectivity service, and after that we are just getting the information whether the information network is having a value or not. So it is same as that of the same coding as done in a broadcast. So if the network info is null and network is connected, so it should broadcast. So we are just initiating the same file, that is a broadcast, change text status to be true. And if it is not connected or any one of them is true, oh sorry, false, so it will focus to the else statement. So new broadcast, just initiating that class dot change status to be the false. So now here you can see that if this is visible variable is producing a true statement or a false statement, if it is true, then it should initiate the connection and it should check the connection. Whether the connection is null or it is connected, then it should change the status to be true. or it will tend us to be the false statement. So new broadcast, it means you are actually initiating, or you can say calling the broadcast class. So here it will be returning true or false statement. So in any stage, this kind of information will lead to some kind of error, and eventually your application will, you can say, crashed. So for preventing the application not to be crashed, you can use a try catch statement. So all of those things are covered under the try statement. So whenever any kind of mishappening or any kind of a code breaks, so it will switch to its catch statement. So catch with exception E, it will print all the error statements inside the log file, right? So here you can see that this is actually broadcast receiver, which is actually receiving the values coming from the broadcast and the my application. So this is a interconnection connectivity where you can actually get to know that whether your any of the radio devices, just like Wi-Fi state or Wi-Fi, your network state is connected over the internet or not. So this is a main file, that is interconnection underscore receiver, which is actually receiving those updates. This is my Gmail ID. So you can write this Gmail ID, and you can create any of the queries if you have any doubts regarding this session. So I will surely revert back as a positive response. So thank you. Thank you so much for this session.